Welcome in. This is the fourth edition of On the Mark with Denmark. As you can see with me, I have Patrick Dooley. Mr. Dooley, he writes for WRUF, Gators Wire, and host of the Another Dooley Noted podcast. Mr. Dooley, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Can't complain over here. So you came from the Dan Mullen presser today. Catch the folks up on what Dan Mullen said today, if he had anything to say other than coach speak.
Yeah, it wasn't overly exciting. He did talk about how they may have some plays this year where they have two backs in the backfield. And that's something they haven't really done really in his career. He's always been kind of a one-back guy, although they did move Billy Latsko back there during the first year when he was offensive coordinator, just so they could have another blocking back. So other than that, though, I mean, we asked him again about defense, and that's what I wrote about for Gators Wire and how bad it was last year. But he has insisted all along that it wasn't as bad as it looked, that they were just game to game, there would be individual things that they would not do well and not do on a consistent basis. So he's pretty convinced that they're going to be a lot better. The players are too. I mean, they know it was embarrassing last year how bad they played.
It seems like to me as an outsider that the secondary coach, forget his name, he was fired last season and they brought in a new one this year. Do you think the defense gets better? I mean, it's hard to tell, but do you think the defense and Todd Grantham take a step up this year?
Well, I know they'll be better. I mean, it's impossible to be that bad. They were historically bad last year. They gave it the most points per game in school history and the most first downs in school history. And again, offenses were set up last year to be successful because you can't practice on air on defense. It doesn't do any good. And again, you didn't have spring football. I think that was a big factor. You know, I was asking Jeremiah Moon about it. He goes, look, we didn't tackle. No, he was out for a good part of the year, but when he was in there, they just didn't tackle people and they didn't play well in the secondary. I don't blame the secondary coaches that were let go. One of them was let go because of NCAA issues that got Dan Mullen into some heat. But, I think they've got, getting some fresh blood in there. I just think they'll be better because they'll have had a spring together. I think you'll see offenses all around the country decrease a little bit. But it is an offensive game now in college football. You got to have a quarterback. If you don't have a quarterback, you can't win.
Yeah, I'd like to thank this podcast sponsor, BJ Ruiz with Farm Bureau Insurance. You can see his contact information right above me at 904-655-4347 for any of your home, life, or auto insurance needs. Go to him for a free quote. So biggest story a couple weeks ago was Texas and OU going to the SEC. That more than likely is going to start happening starting next year. They say 25, but we know more than likely that it's probably going to start coming to fruition next year. So my question to you, if you're in the Power Five, we all know everyone in the group of five, that UCF and the Cincinnati are trying to get to Power Five. If you're Clemson, Oregon, FSU, you can throw in Ohio State, even Notre Dame, is your head on a swivel right now? And, are you on the phone with everyone, or are you pretty confident, you're pretty chill where you're sitting in your conference?
Well, I mean, Notre Dame, I think, is still cemented into what they're going to be doing. And they can't join any other league other than the ACC. It's a huge fine if they do another league. I think the biggest thing is that and obviously the commissioners of the Pac-12 and the Big 12 met, and they're talking about merging. And I don't see any other way for the Big 12 to survive as a Power 5 conference other than to merge with the Pac-12. Everybody says, well, they can bring in some other teams. Who are you going to bring in that's going to increase your TV value? Cincinnati, Memphis, SMU. I mean, the TV markets are nice, but those aren't teams that really, shake the tree. I mean, it's just not. I don't know where else you would go if you want to raid the AAC. You're not really adding that much value to what your next negotiation is going to be. So I think that could reduce it. Now, the question then is, do we say, and I think the AAC, Mike Oresco was talking about this yesterday, how he's really tried to remove this group of five notation. And I think he's positioning himself that if the Big 12 and the Pac-12 do merge and become one conference, I don't know what they'll call it, the Big Pac,
The Big West.
well, I don't know what it'll be. That the AAC will then step in as the fifth Power Five, and but that's a question: can they get that big seat at the table for what I call them the five families? And we just found out. Obviously, Greg Sankey just signed his extension. He is Vito Corleone. I mean, they just basically wiped out everybody by making that move.
So I find all the transition that's going on with OU, Texas, and everyone else, I find that fascinating. I find what's happening behind the scenes with ESPN even more fascinating. How much do you think the TV boys, ESPN and Fox, play a role? Because, I mean, we all know that, the reason OU and Texas are going to the SEC is because ESPN is paying this massive check to these SEC schools. Do you think that they're on the phone with the TV boys while they're making these negotiations, or how do you think that all plays out?
And again, I don't know, but my suspicion is that it doesn't take a genius to know that if you add Texas and Oklahoma, you've increased the value of your conference. You don't have to ask ESPN that. You know that. They know that. That Texas and Oklahoma know that coming to a better conference is going to help their profiles and help all the things that they do. And you're talking about Texas being the number one generator of revenue. So you're bringing that to your conference. Oklahoma's in the playoff every year. You're bringing that to your conference and making the conference, more attractive to the TV. And so I don't really think that I don't believe the conspiracy theory that ESPN put this deal together. I believe that it's like all you have to have is a brain to know that this made sense, that if Texas and Oklahoma made inroads with you on a phone call and you went, okay, let's talk it through and see. And you don't have to ask ESPN about that. It's obvious to me.
For UF, Vegas has Florida winning 9 games this year. Is that right?
Well, it's probably right. And, because here's the thing. Florida has 4 of its 5 toughest games, in my opinion, on the road or away from home. And that would be Kentucky, Missouri, LSU, and then obviously Georgia and Jacksonville. Okay, Alabama's their tough game at home, and that's a great kind of a rock for the season ticket sales and everything like that. But it's a tough schedule in that regard. Now, Dan Mullen is 10-2 in true road games at Florida, so that's a good sign. But and then Georgia gets the easier schedule with Auburn and Arkansas from the West. So I think because of the schedule is one reason. And I do think that people after last year, they're putting too much into last year. Last year was the weirdest, strangest year. No spring football, less tackling, and it showed, I think, all season for everybody. The number one defense in the country last year was Army. You know why? Because they never let anybody have the ball. And that was the only way to stop people. Just don't let them have the ball. So I think 9 is about right. It doesn't mean Florida can't win 11. It also doesn't mean they can't win 7. I mean, it's a team that we have to know. And I thought Dan made a great point today. He was talking about, he knows that Emory Jones has a maturity and he has the talent to be a great quarterback, to be the next great Florida quarterback. What he doesn't know is how he's going to react when he's out there and he's in situations. He knows he'll get in the right play on 3rd and 4, but when that play starts to blow up, what's he going to do? So that was interesting that he doesn't know what Emory is going to turn out to be. He knows how good he could be, but he doesn't know what he will be. And he's absolutely right about that. You never know when a quarterback steps into the starting role, what he's going to be like, how he's going to handle things. So we'll see. And I think that's one reason. Obviously you lose a lot of other talent, guys like Tony and Pitts, first-round draft picks. You lose, obviously but you have this incredible backfield of running backs but Florida has not been able to run block. So it's just and then the secondary and the defense and the struggles they had. So there are a lot of questions about Florida. There are fewer questions about Georgia. And that's why I think people look at this and then they see that Alabama on the schedule and they go, well, that's a loss. They get Alabama at the perfect time. You get them early. Have a quarterback making his third start. We'll see how that all goes. And if you get a full swamp, which I don't know if it'll be full, but it'll probably be pretty close to full. But that should be an advantage as well. We've seen that happen before.
Looking at the SEC, it seems like a lot of teams out in the SEC West Division, everybody's speaking highly of them. Lane Kiffin, year 2. Mike Leach, you look at what he did at Washington State and Texas Tech in year 2. He did a lot of improvement from those schools from year 1. Sam Pittman, and then obviously you expect a lot from Alabama, LSU, and A&M. All those teams can't do well. They can't all have 8, 9, 10 wins. Of those teams in the SEC West, what team do you think, if you had to pick one, and I had to give you a Ben Franklin to go to Vegas, would have a disappointing season this year?
Well, I mean, Arkansas, what Sam Pittman did was tremendous last year, but he's got to break in a new quarterback, and there are some issues that they have. Certainly, Mississippi State, I have no idea what they're going to be. And the big question mark to me is LSU. They're the X factor in that division because, they've got really good players if you go by recruiting services and if they can keep Derek Stingley healthy this year. But the quarterback situation got really interesting when Miles Brennan was hurt. So that means we know it's going to be Max Johnson. We know what he did at the end of the year was pretty good, but now he's going to be the starter. And they have one backup behind him, and that's Doug Nussmeier's son, and that's it. So there could be issues there. I do know that LSU defense was awful last year, and I just said everybody's defense was bad. Are they going to get better? They could be the kind of team that they're not going to have a year like they had 2 years ago, but they could be a team that ends up being Alabama's biggest competition. But I still like Texas A&M a lot. I believe that Jimbo will figure out his quarterback situation, and I didn't think Kellen Mond was that good. So he was able to win, go 10-1 last year with Kellen Mond, who was a senior, but I still didn't think he was that good a player. And they're loaded everywhere else. I think they'll be fine, especially if they can get their receivers to step up.
The quarterback for A&M, it spoke a lot to me that Jimbo didn't dip into the transfer portal and grab a quarterback. That shows me that he's confident in what he has already. They lose 4 of their 5 offensive linemen. So the big question for A&M is, do you think they can not beat but compete with Alabama this year?
Oh, yeah, I think they can. I think Alabama, I know they recruit better than anybody. It's unbelievable how good they do in recruiting, but they've lost a lot again. And you almost feel like at some point it is going to come up and bite them. Now, when I say bite them, it means they may lose 2 games. I don't know that they will. I think they'll beat Miami in the first game, and then but they got to go to Texas A&M. And if LSU is truly plays up to their skill level, that'd be another tough game as well. I think it's. I think the West is going to be really interesting, and then you got Auburn, which is, we don't know what to expect with a new coach coming in there from Boise State and Brian Harsin. I think Haynes King is a guy that they think can be special for them, and we'll see. And Jimbo's a great quarterback coach. I think he's one of the best play callers and quarterback coaches in the country.
All right, rapid fire 3 questions, and I'll let you get out of here. True or false? Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State make the playoff this year.
I'm going to go with false, and I've got A&M in and Alabama out this year.
Okay, so then that answers my next question. You don't have Bama and Georgia in the SEC title game.
I don't. I have A&M and Georgia, and I know I'm going against the grain on that. And but I just have a feeling that A&M is going to be, I think they're going to get it done. There's just a feeling I have, and I'm probably dead wrong because you never bet against Nick Saban.
The next coach to win a college football national title that hasn't won one yet.
Well, That's a good question. That's a hard question because, I mean, the obvious choice would be Lincoln Riley because I like their team a lot this year. And again, I don't see them as much as other teams, but I think everything I'm hearing out there is their defense is going to be pretty good. And you saw what they did. Now, again, they were playing against a Florida team that didn't want to be there, and a lot of guys weren't there. But you saw what they could do against Florida in that game. So we'll see. They've got to get off to a good start. I mean, they can't do what they did last year, but I think he certainly has the potential to do it. I'm high on Mario Cristobal too at Oregon. Maybe having a chance to get in there. I think they'll make the playoffs, and then you never know what can happen there.
Yeah, Pat, thanks for the time. I know you're a busy man. Tell the folks how you can get a hold of you and catch your work.
Yeah, well, obviously we're on the radio every day. We got that going. Jeff Cardozo and I, and then of course, if you go to Gators Wire, every Monday I have a book of lists, and then I wrote something for them again today. And during football season, I'll be writing a little more for them. WRUF, I'm still doing the back nine. I'm still doing the grades when Florida will be playing games for them. And of course, another duly noted podcast, which has really been very successful. We're full up on advertising and having a lot of fun with it, and trying some different things that I'm kind of growing into that role since I started doing it in December with live video. So, and trying to get those Zoom guests like you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a different world than when you were at the Gainesville Sun all those years.
Well, I mean, we were thinking about this the other day. Today we got 6 players all up on a podium to do their interviews, and you had to get a mic to talk. In the old days, we would sit around with guys and just chat with them. And we chat with them about everything. We got to know players. I have friendships to this day, with guys like Judd Davis and Chris Doring and Donnie Young, and Jason Odom, and Ed Chester, who's going to be on my podcast Monday, and people like that. That now guys come in today, and I was like, who is that? We never get to really, and that was, like I said, that's probably the last time we'll be able to have an in-person interview. They said that they're going all Zoom calls from here on out.
Yeah, definitely a different world, and they're taking as much safety as they can. You can't risk any of these players being in COVID protocol like they did last season. So Pat Dooley,
it's a real problem, and he talked about today they were in a really good shape in terms of vaccinations. Their whole staff, everybody, the players. I mean, I think they're at the threshold not to be tested during the year, but you never know. It only takes one guy, and it could be your starting left guard, and he tests positive, and he's had contact tracing, and there's going to be issues as this season goes along.
Yeah. Mr. Dooley, thanks for the time again, and hope to catch up soon.
All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.
Take care.